everyone, welcome to the next session of Strength of Materials. In this session, I will discuss about stress strain curve of ductile and brittle material. In the previous lecture, I have discussed about what is a ductile material and what is a brittle material. Let's have a quick recap. Ductile material is the one which can be drawn into the form of wire. It is a material on which if you apply load, it will get deformed up to a certain limit, which will be called as the elastic limit, and after that if you continuously apply the load, the material will get deformed. This deformation will be irreversible and the material will rupture over a period of time. Brittle materials, on the other hand, are the ones on which if you apply load, to a certain extent it will be able to bear the load, and after that it will suddenly rupture. So first we will see tension test on mild steel. Mild steel is an example of ductile material. Here you can see there is a specimen which I have taken. This is a round bar in cross section, and this is the front view that you see. L1 is the gauge length, the length over which you expect to see your result, and L2 is the total length of the portion. Now, this is a tension test specimen before rupture, or rather before I put it on the UTM, which is a universal testing machine which is used for measuring of tension, compression, shear, bending, flexure. All these experiments can be done on that machine. I will be soon uploading a video on the working of UTM. Currently you can just understand that UTM is the one which is going to hold the piece here and at this end, and it will apply some load from both the ends such that the specimen breaks after a period of time. So this is the specimen which is before rupture, and after you apply the load you will see a particular pattern of material structure change over here in the zone, gauge length zone, and after a period of time you will see that the material is not able to bear the load which you apply from both the ends, and so it will rupture and break. And the breakage is also very beautiful because initially when you see in this zone the material will start cracking, and the crack will generate in the form of 90 degree. The crack propagates at a 90-degree angle, but after some time when you apply the load it breaks at this 45-degree angle which you see over here. So this angle is nothing but 45 degree, which was initially 90 degree to the direction of application of the load. Now after the specimen breaks into two pieces, obviously you will see some change in length, and the final length which you obtain will be much more than the gauge length and the length of the specimen which you had initially taken. Here when it breaks there is a pattern seen. The top portion and the bottom portion breaks with a very minimum diameter at the center. The top portion of the specimen is called as the cup and the bottom portion is called as the cone, especially in these zones where you see the rupture taking place. The diameter of the cone will be much lesser as compared to the diameter of the cup. Suppose if I assume that the initial diameter of the specimen was 12 mm, you will observe that the cup will have diameter of around 8.2 mm for example, and here the cone will become 7.5 or 7.9 mm. So you will see a change in diameter. Suppose if you remove the specimen from the UTM which was connected from both the sides, and you want to check what is a cup and what is a cone in case you have forgotten the arrangement of these specimens, because the specimen is actually going to look of the same color. So it is difficult to know which side was attached to the top portion of the UTM and which was attached to the bottom portion. So it is very easy to know which is the top portion and which is the bottom portion by measuring the diameter. The diameter of the cup will be more than cone. So here I have written down L1 which is the gauge length you have seen, L2 which was the total length of the specimen, and L3 is the final length. Obviously there will be a increase in length. So L3 can be measured over here. Once you know those gauge points, the points which I am going to mark with the help of some chalk or permanent marker. So at the end when I measure this length L3, obviously the length will be increased as compared to the gauge length. So these are the same 2 points which I have marked over here. for L1. So this is how the tension test on mild steel is conducted on a UTM. Next we will see a very important part which is called as a stress strain diagram of this material. For the stress strain diagram, initially the load on the UTM is 0. When the load is 0, obviously the stress is 0 because stress is P upon A. So when the load P is 0, stress is 0. Since the stress is 0, obviously there is no change in length, so there is no strain. So the origin is always at 0. From 0 or O, whatever you mark, from here you will observe that initially Hooke's law is applicable to mild steel. So you will see as you increase the load, the stress is going to increase and so is the strain going to increase. This continues up to a certain portion of time, and this value over here is marked as point A. This point A is called as proportionality limit. It comes from Hooke's law, wherein you say that stress is directly proportional to strain. So when I say stress increases, strain increases. There is a direct proportion between the two. Hence A is named as proportionality limit. After proportionality limit comes a point E, which is called as the elastic limit. Elastic limit and proportionality limit cannot be actually found out when you do a test on UTM. These are just 2 points which are marked theoretically. They could be the same point, you can say. Elastic limit is the limit up to which Hooke's law is applicable. So you can see over here that I have marked O to B. This O to B point is actually my elastic zone up to the elastic limit B, which means stress increases, strain increases. The moment I bring back the force value to 0, when I reduce the load, stress will slowly reduce and so will the strain, and this will come back to its original shape and size. Now I will not stop at B. I will obviously apply more load after the elastic limit. So when I apply more load on the body, the material shows a different kind of behavior, because after the point B, what happens is if you start applying load, the body starts entering the plastic zone, which means if you apply load, the body deforms. When you remove the load, you will still see some amount of deformation is still remaining in the body, which is the definition of plastic material or plastic zone, as I am saying, because mild steel is not a plastic material, but it can definitely show something which is called as elastic zone and plastic zone. So you will see, you will slowly increase the load, which means the stress is increasing. The strain also increases. You can see from B to C, the strain has increased. So the strain increases. But after this point C, what happens is, you will see that though you do not apply any load, but still there is an increase in strain. You can see the stress is slowly reducing because there is no increase of load, but you can see the strain is still increasing. Now these points which I have marked, to a certain extent these points are actually a little larger than life, which means they are a little magnified for your understanding. So do not consider these 2 points too far away, they are actually very close. So the C to D and G, when you turn this point, this is actually very close, but I have drawn it a little spacious for your understanding. So from C to D, you will see a slow increase of your strain, though there is no increase of load. Here what happens is the material starts rearranging itself, because when you apply load, the material starts straining, which means the particles go away from each other. But in nature, no material wants to get strained. So after this point D, what happens is for some time the material uses the energy which you give in the form of strain to the body, which is called as strain energy, and here the material starts rearranging itself such that it is now able to resist the load and shows an ultimate stress value which it can take as a load on it. And after that what you see is final necking of the material. As I have shown you, a very thin neck is formed and the material ruptures at the point F. So the zone of E to F is actually called as a necking region. By necking region, I mean that the material which was straight will now form a neck like this, and after some time obviously there will be a rupture at this point, which is called as the point F. Okay, there is one more thing I need to discuss, that is the point G, which you see over here. This G is a particular point on this curve which, if traced back to the strain line, this O to G is called as a permanent set. By permanent set, I mean that after this point G, if you apply load, the material can never return back to its original shape and size. Now, having said that, you would ask me that already I have entered the plastic zone, but I have mentioned that this diagram which you see is actually a little larger than life. So this change is actually very quick. It could be something like this, very small. So obviously in this zone, what you see is a magnified diagram, and here the material, after it crosses the point G, it cannot regain back its original shape and size. And when I trace it back O to G, this zone is actually representing a permanent set in the material, which means a permanent deformation in the material. Now, if you observe this line, theoretically when it is traced back, you will observe that G dash is actually parallel to this line, which was originally obtained. This is a straight line, and this is a line which is parallel to it. Now, after the material ruptures at point F, what you see is a steep decrease in the load value, because after this there is no surface remaining. If you understand, sigma is P by A, although I can increase the load, but the material has broken. Since the material has broken and it is being pulled from both the ends, there is no point of pulling because this area is no more present. So since the area is not there, obviously the stress value will slowly reduce, and once it reduces, it will slowly come back to its original value, which is 0. Now, you can show the graph up to this point F. Say this is O, so I'll call this as O dash. It is not necessary to trace it back to O dash, but this is only for the understanding that every graph must have an area. As you can see, there is a particular area over here. So I can call that area as O, C, E, F, O dash. So this is just an area. Now this area obviously indicates something. It indicates the amount of strain energy which is stored in the body, because there is a strain in the object which has undergone tension effect. So this area is important. And one more thing which you need to know is, had this material not shown this kind of a behavior which we see over here, the actual stress strain curve which is predicted according to theory is something like this. So it is called as a true stress strain curve. This is what we expect to see. It is going to show elastic limit, and then it will show some ultimate value over here, say E dash, and finally it will rupture at F dash. This is called as a true stress strain curve. But in real life, we do not obtain this. We obtain a graph something like this. And obviously this point is also going to join back and come back to 0. Here you can see I have marked all the points. O is the origin, A is the proportionality limit, B is the elastic limit, C is the upper yield point, D is the lower yield point, E is the ultimate stress point, F is the rupture point, and OG is a permanent set on the material. Next, we will discuss about the calculation of different stresses from the stress strain curve. The first one is nominal breaking stress. This is something which you calculate at the breaking point, which was the rupture point F. So you'll use the formula load at the breaking point. So when you use the UTM, the load constantly increases, and when the material ruptures, after that it starts decreasing. So at the rupture value, whatever load you find, that is to be considered here, divided by the original cross-section area of the body. For calculating the cross-section area, we'll use the formula pi by 4 d square. D is the diameter of the rod. For example, if I take it as 10 to 12 mm, whatever value, so accordingly I'm going to substitute and I'll get the value of area. Second one is the actual breaking stress. This is the stress which we are calculating over the original area. So it is called as nominal breaking stress. And the second one is the actual breaking stress, wherein we are going to consider the reduced cross-section area at fracture, which means say 7 to 8 mm is what the fracture diameter is. So that value we are going to take and we are going to calculate the reduced cross-sectional area. So these are the two types of stresses that we can calculate at the breaking point. The next one is the yield stress. Yield stress is the point where you see that the material starts yielding and it is not able to resist the amount of load applied on the body. So There we are going to calculate by using load at the yield point divided by the original cross section area. So at the point of yield, whatever value of load you find at the point C, there we are going to use the yield value load and we will calculate the yield stress. For ultimate stress, there was a point which was the ultimate stress point. So at that point, whatever load was obtained divided by the cross section area, if we calculate, we can get the ultimate stress. Working stress can be calculated using the formula actual axial load upon the original cross section area. So whatever load is applied on the body, if we take that and divide by the original cross section area, we will get the working stress. We should remember that working stress is something which is much lesser as compared to the ultimate stress. Ultimate stress will be always on the higher side. Next is percentage reduction in area. We can use the formula original area, which is pi by 4 d squared, where the diameter is say 10 to 12 mm, and final area will take into consideration the reduced diameter, say 7 to 8 mm. And again we will divide by the original cross section area because original value is higher. So according to mathematics, since we are calculating reduction, we will be using the higher value in the denominator. Then the seventh formula is of percentage elongation. By using this formula, we can calculate how much elongation has taken place in the material. So we can use the formula final length minus original length divided by the original length. So this is the formula for percentage elongation. So this is all about the stress strain diagram for mild steel. Next, I will introduce to you a very important concept of design, which is factor of safety. When any object is designed, factor of safety is always taken into consideration. It is the ratio of ultimate stress, which is the maximum stress that the body can handle, divided by the working or permissible stress. Factor of safety has no units because it is a ratio of same two quantities. I'll give you an example. Suppose if an engineer designs a lift, the lift is designed to carry around say 10 to 12 people, but you will generally see that on the lift it is written that only 6 to 7 people are allowed. So what about the rest number of people could have been accommodated in the lift, but they are not. The reason is the wire which pulls the lift is actually designed for a particular amount of stress which it can bear, which is always the ultimate or the maximum value. But it is always subjected to the working or permissible stress, which is much lower, so that the cord which is going to come under a fluctuating kind of load, there will be people entering the lift, leaving the lift. So there will be a fluctuating load which can lead to the stress and fatigue, which is failure in a material. So to avoid that, we always work under the permissible stress, and the ultimate stress is what we design the material for. So if you observe, factor of safety will always be greater than 1 because ultimate and working stress or permissible stress will never be equal. Ultimate will be much greater than working value. So factor of safety is always greater than 1. For example, the factor of safety in steel is around 1.5 to 2. For concrete, the value is 3 to 4 because concrete is more weaker as compared to steel. So we need more factor of safety. See, more factor of safety means that there will be more material added into the system. When you add more material, you are adding more cost into the system. So when you add the cost, as an engineer, you should be able to justify why you are adding more material and increasing the cost of the material. So the only justification is material which are used in the common service of public will have life, safety, all these things into picture. So when you have the life of the object and also of people involved, then materials cost doesn't incur so much value as compared to the prior one. So that is why at that time factor of safety is supposed to be considered. Now we'll see the last concept, that is of stress. Stress strain curve for brittle material. You can see this is the stress versus strain diagram. These are 4 material which I have taken. They are all brittle. The order over here is such that the stress value, that high carbon steel will have higher value of stress which can be resisted or load that it can resist before breaking as compared to cast iron, whose value is more as compared to aluminium, and aluminium's value is more as compared to concrete. So here the value of A represents the elastic zone. So the material will show some elasticity. If you increase the load, stress will increase, so will the strain. Once you remove the load, it will go back to its original shape and size. But after a particular point, it will directly show rupture. So here the point B indicates rupture, which is very important because in ductile material, you can see a beautiful curve with many other points, ultimate value. Here the point B is the rupture as well as the ultimate value. So it is the ultimate stress value which you see, and there's also the rupture point. So it is the maximum stress it can bear and it will immediately break. So these are the various materials and their graph. So with this I conclude this session. In the next session, we will discuss about stress strain in bars with varying cross section. I hope you have understood the session. If you have any doubts, write to me in the comment section. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to my channel. Hit the bell icon for latest updates of my videos. I'll see you in the next session. Thank you.